was always drawing when I was from, a toddler on up, and I could draw you or the dog. I like to draw the dog and stuff like that, and cars I really liked cars to draw, and I still do sometimes. And my sister remembers me as always drawing, and I did a lot anyway, and I got a lot of strokes for it, But then I got away from it. I got into music. I majored in music in college, and then I didn't do visual art for a long time, but I thought about it a lot. And then I got back into it in the 90s, and I started painting, and I had a few shows, and everything sold really well, so it was encouraging. I mean, not for huge amounts of money, but for decent money. And then I got busy with my career and stopped for a while and started back again recently with, and then here lately this past year I have this 1 year long project that was very absorbing. I've put all my energy into that I had for art.
So tell me about your 1 year project and what the drive behind it was and what you did for it.
The last year and a half or so, my dad started to decline rapidly. He had dementia, and it was a really scary thing to go through. My sister and I had to deal with it. He was living by himself and driving, and he'd wind up in places that he didn't know how he got there, and we didn't know. You don't know when he's going to call, and he was lucid, but he couldn't keep track of time or anything, and we didn't know what to do. And there isn't really any manual on what to do, as we found out. You're on your own. And finally, some things happened, and he had to go. We were able to get him into full-time residential care because he needed to be watched all the time. And but that became, it really depressed me. It was a shock to my system to see him go down so fast, because he used to be a brilliant guy. And for some reason, out of the blue, one day on my iPad, I just drew this face that had a kind of an expression on it, and that was, kind of summed up what I was feeling that day. And anyway, I put that on my Facebook feed, and people just loved it. And so it made me feel good, and it made me feel better that day. It was art therapy. I had made something that was mine, that didn't have anything to do with the problems in life. It was kind of a little escape valve too. Anyway, and then I thought, well, I'm just going to do one of these every day for a year. And I wrote that, and so there I was. And I had no idea how hard that was actually going to be to do in reality. And it was real difficult. I got better at the drawing and stuff right away. And people started expecting these things, and I didn't want to disappoint them. And I wanted them to not be able to predict what I was going to do, and I wanted it to be fun, and but I did it. I did one every day for a whole year, and I made a few not very good drawings, but mostly pretty good stuff, and I put it all up there on Facebook for the whole world to see, and now I have 365 pieces of art that I can do something with, so, and plan to, so.
And what was the inspiration for just every day? What did you?
Oh, that could be, most of the drawings were just improvised. I would draw until I liked something. And sometimes it happened really quick, and sometimes it was a struggle. Sometimes I would have I would see something in my mind, and I would get that out there, but there were a few nights that were really difficult, and through the whole thing I had fear that I was just going to dry up, that I wouldn't make it. There would be some night that I just plain couldn't put anything out there but that didn't really happen. I mean, in retrospect, there were a few I would like to do over again, but that's just the way life is. They're all basically first drafts. So then there were two. Some people asked me if I would draw a friend of ours who was turning 90 and surprise him with it, and I thought that was a good idea. And so I did that. And one night, well, it was the night that Breaking Bad was the finale of Breaking Bad, and I loved that show, and I did a group portrait of the cast of Breaking Bad, but it was very stylized. I didn't actually look at them to draw it, and other than my friend, I did a likeness of him. And then at the end of the series, I did a likeness of myself. I thought, well, that really is the best way to end it. It's here.
So what do you think you took away from the project?
Well, off the top, I'm somebody that can really do something large, and I can work through fatigue. There was a time where I thought I've got to stop and take a break, but I had come so far that I didn't. Obviously, I'm really proud of myself for doing that. It was something in it that belongs to me, and I did it, and it really shows. Even though there's a bunch of images in there, there's a consistency to it, and I tried to have a variety every day, but you can tell on almost every one of them who drew it, with no doubt, I think.
So moving forward, what's next in your art development, or are you going to go back and redo them? Do you have plans to continue the project or build off of it?
Oh yeah, see, the thing now that it's over is the first things first is the website, and I happen to be one of Marion's web developers, so I can have a free website, but still it's a lot of, in other words, I can build my own website, but I'm like the shoemaker who's barefoot. I do this all day long, so I don't do my own stuff at night, but that's what I'm doing these nights, is getting this cataloged and out there, and also ability to download and purchase prints, because they're all high resolution. And so I'm getting that all set up in my spare time now. And I also want to do some of them as paintings. I don't plan on copying anything directly, but there were some good ideas in there that I want to see bigger and on canvas. And people like to buy a painting, a thing, and that you can, or show or something like that. And there is someone who has a gallery that has mentioned possibly trying to do a show here in Houston. So we'll see about that. And I did get to be in a small show this summer with 2 of the pieces. So it's been a thing for that, maybe possibilities of some doors that might open up in my life, changing a little bit for the better because of it.
Well, that is awesome. Is there anything that I haven't mentioned that you want to talk about, or a question I haven't asked?
No, really, I think the questions were really well thought. That I don't know what else to add to it. I learned a lot of skill with the iPad too, in all of this, and so that's an additional takeaway from it, is that I'm kind of a virtuoso of at least one app, maybe 2.
Were they all done on the iPad?
Every single one. I did draw on paper sometimes and photograph those, and then go in the iPad and change things, erase things, add layers of color and texture and stuff like that, but mostly everything. And then as the project, I did a lot more of that in the early stages. Towards the end, I was really trying to keep it purely digital, and there was very little drawing or other textures, other things involved in that. But you can do that on the iPad like any computer, and we do that in design all the time. To make texture, you get source files for that, and you would get them from either public domain websites or something, or do it yourself, make it yourself on some other thing.
Okay.
So
interesting. All right. Do you think that's good, or do you have anything, Jose? You have anything, or?
I guess the only question I would have is, what would you say to someone that would want to take on a task like this, where they would, this was definitely a big task, that part of your life, but something that's very time consuming. What kind of advice
I would
you
say, because if I had known how hard it was going to be, I would not have started it. So you can't think about how hard it's going to be. You have to think about just doing it, or what do you want at the end of it? Because it's a good thing to have at the end, But yeah, you have to be prepared to give up. I had to make cuts in my life to do it. No, I didn't get to exercise as much. I didn't miss out on anything important, but I had to be home in time to do one, and it usually took 1 to 2 hours, so I would, but I like to exercise, and I didn't exercise as much when this was going on. That was the only thing that I could cut back on, so. But then, really, I would just say you got to go for it. At some point, when it gets right down to it, all you've got is these little voices that say, no, it's too much, it's too hard, it's too long, it's too big. That stuff is what keeps us from starting.